Katrina, I think a lot of people were surprised by this story because they look at Anthropic's Claude as like, this is the safe AI company. And this is the one that's like the antithesis of, everybody out there is people who are concerned about what AI can do. And it kind of raises eyebrows about like who their partners are, who they're working with. What can you tell us about this contract?
It's really important to understand Anthropic has been a long time contractor for the Defense Department. They have a clearance. They're able to use Claude on a number of systems, including one called Maven Smart System, which is produced by Palantir but used widely across the US military. So Anthropic and the military really do go hand in hand. And that's one of the fault lines you're now seeing evolve. As you have others trying to catch up and get those defense contracts, you have XAI in the midst, you have OpenAI, you have obviously others. And who gets those contracts and under what terms is now really a key point. And because Anthropic has always said, here are our values, and because they're now saying we'd like to foreground our values with their relation with the Pentagon is clearly pushing back and saying, well, we have our own values, thank you very much, we'll make them.
Well, for people who don't follow the space so closely, the values that Anthropic puts out there to differentiate itself from competition, to make it distinct from competition, what are they?
I think safe AI is this very complex, ambiguous phrase, but Anthropic has been the ones to say we want to have safeguards when it comes to surveillance. We want to make sure our AI is not used for damaging purposes. And given the focus on what ICE, enforcement agents and others have been doing recently, that's really become a key fault line.
And the government says, well, we'd like to have access per 10. Or like, what is the government saying when it comes to having those guardrails? Because this is like such an important global topic when we think about AI and technology and social media, whether it's our kids, whether it's our families, our personal lives, and then obviously the role of government. We're so critical, right? The United States when it comes to a country like China and their surveillance of its citizens. But yet, this kind of says the U.S. wants some surveillance too.
Well,
sorry, that's a big question.
The Pentagon certainly says we'll make the rules, thanks. And so anyone who is pushing back, especially on things like the laws of war, these are international rules, the way in which AI can be used, it comes down to two things: surveillance, to damaging, what can potentially concerning things, surveillance and autonomous weapons. Now, the Pentagon and the US writ large has its own rules on what it can do with surveillance, mass surveillance, and what it can do with autonomous weapons. And who gets to make those rules, and whether it is Anthropic, in the Pentagon's view, throwing its weight around, or whether the Pentagon wants to throw its weight around back and say, well, then fine, we're reviewing whether you can work for us.
You know what I think about, though? Like, you think of the traditional defense companies. There was a point, I mean, I feel like we've kind of rolled back.
Like the Lockheeds.
Well, the Lockheed Martins, right? The go through all of the Northrop Grummons, the RTXs.
Yeah.
Like, there was a point where there might be a pension fund or an investment group who said, like, we don't want to do that. We don't want to be involved in warfare. But it's interesting, these tech companies are increasingly involved in that space. And I don't know that there's as much pushback against the investment community, but there could be. And so that's why an Anthropic might care about putting guardrails around, right? Potentially when it
I think you've seen in the case of Palantir, you've seen the New York pension fund controller say, we are going to look at exactly how Palantir's tools are used in domestic surveillance.
We are or not?
We are.
Yeah.
And now, that doesn't go as far as to say we're going to pull our money from Palantir by any means, but it begins to say we want to know how AI tools are used on the U.S. population.
Yeah.
But I think Carol brings up a good point, and it also raises the point that this isn't anything new for Silicon Valley or the tech industry in general working with the Pentagon or large-scale government contracts. You've seen pushback years ago from Alphabet employees over certain uses of technology at Alphabet and at Google. You have Microsoft, you have Oracle. I mean, the list goes on and on.
You have Google with Project Maven, and I think that's the key one. You had Google protesting, thousands of people who found out their tech was being used.
That was a different era.
Well, it's an era that's carrying on, because now you've got people worried about, are our tools being used domestically on US civilians? And are our tools going to be used for applications of war that really haven't been tested yet? And what's different about AI is nobody knows when it's going to go wrong or how it's going to go wrong. We know about hallucinations just from our daily lives. Put that into a drone, you've got to really think about those safeguards. And so where Anthropic is asking about safeguards, others are now really pushing forwards.